Hey y'all,
we're Diamond and Silk, and you're watching Right Side Broadcasting Network.
So make sure you watch what's right so you won't get left, and make sure you support Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Even though presidential candidates are no longer shaking hands and kissing babies, the race for the White House hasn't stopped. Trump campaign is now reaching voters online.
The campaign, like its leader, President Trump, has 1 year, and that is forward.
Hey everybody.
Buenas noches.
Hello and welcome.
Hi everyone. We have the best data in the country. We have the best infrastructure laid out. And so now we get to capitalize on that data, on this infrastructure, to take our events online to the American public.
You might not see anyone going door to door. Those same volunteers are now making campaign calls from home.
While President Trump is focused on the health and safety of the American people, we here at the campaign are committed to defeating the Democrats, and how all of you at home can help us and join in this fight.
Its online campaign reached more than 1 million viewers.
It really is new age campaigning.
Just let's realize how good Donald Trump's political operation is.
The Trump Organization has a well-documented, robust online infrastructure, what they call their Trump Army.
Tonight, I am honored to launch Catholics for Trump Coalition.
And welcome to our very first Black Voices for Trump online broadcast.
How can women stay engaged and informed?
I could have not felt more proud about this country.
President Trump has done about everything that you can do.
The Biden's record on notable job-killing trade deals.
I'm supporting NAFTA.
We're so fortunate to have a wartime president to lead us through this global challenge.
And we're going to get through it.
And we are going to keep America great.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another great episode of Team Trump Online. I am Corey Lewandowski, the senior advisor to the president's re-election campaign, and it is such a pleasure to be here this evening. Joining me this evening to have a detailed conversation about who I like to call Beijing Biden is Representative Matt Gaetz from the state of Florida. He represents the Pensacola area, and Representative Elise Stefanik from the state of New York, who represents the area best known for Fort Drum. Each of them are going to discuss with us tonight the pros and cons of Beijing Biden, the impact of the coronavirus on their respective states and what their work has done in Congress so far as we look forward to a successful 2020 November election for Donald Trump. So let's get right into it. Both of you, thank you for joining us. I'd like to begin, if we could, on the corona pandemic, which has encircled the globe. And if we can, Congresswoman, I'd like to start with you. We have seen the state of New York hit very hard, and specifically the city of New York and Suffolk County on Long Island. A significant impact, probably more so than in your area. Can you tell us what has been transpiring in your area of the state and the resources and support that you've been able to receive from this administration so far?
Well, absolutely. So first, Corey, I want to thank all of our healthcare workers, our hospital workers, our first responders who have truly stepped up during this historic crisis. New Yorkers have been hit hard. We are the epicenter of the coronavirus. And while much of the focus is on New York City, this has impacted the state as a whole. The district I represent is rural. It's the 12 northernmost counties, but we have had a number of positive cases and our hospitals have been hit hard. And our county public health officials have really stepped up. And I'm truly proud of our ability to work together. And most importantly, this president and this administration has delivered significant results to New York. They have been there for New York when we have needed support from the federal government. All of the viewers probably are familiar with the Navy Comfort ship that sailed. You could see those amazing images with the Statue of Liberty. So our Department of Defense facilities and resources were sent. Also, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers built a hospital at the Javits Center, which is in the middle of New York City. They turned that around in days, so that was a historic effort. In addition, the administration was able to provide additional ventilators as we were heading towards the apex. And most recently, yesterday, the president met with the governor of New York and committed to doubling New York's daily testing capabilities. So when we talk about delivering results, this president has done so for New York, but across the country.
Well, thank you. And, Congressman, the state of Florida has also seen a spike in coronavirus cases. We have seen a state which has been much slower to close than what the city of New York wanted to do. And I think the reason for that is because of the government's desire down there to keep the state open and for business. We know how important the tourism business is in the state of Florida. Can you talk to us specifically about what has been transpiring in the state of Florida, the response that Governor DeSantis has had, and what is transpiring in your specific congressional district as it relates to the coronavirus?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Corey. Matter of fact, I think the last couple of times I've seen you, we've actually been in the state of Florida, enjoying the sunshine and enjoying all that that beautiful place has to offer. I could say that Governor DeSantis is doing an excellent job. It was recently that Dr. Birx said that Florida had a model for America when it came to county by county, community by community contact tracing. I think with the president taking a very aggressive approach to try to not just flatten the curve, but smash this curve nationwide, providing resources, providing testing, coordinating assets for our governors and our mayors, we really can look ahead to brighter days. And that's what we're trying to plan for in the state of Florida. We don't think our country will work best if every governor is trying to shut down the governor next door. Our people want to work. They've been participating in one of the most prosperous and joyous economies that our nation has ever seen, certainly in our lifetime. And so in Florida, by having a little bit of a lighter touch on the draconian efforts, but then a more technologically focused approach to contact tracing, germ transmission, we think that we might be able to open up some of our more open air shopping areas or dining areas first, see how that goes, start with smaller crowds at some of our attractions, ensure that we have the right cleaning and antiviral technologies in play there. And then, the goal here from Elisa's district all the way at the top of America and upstate New York, all the way down to my beloved Florida, is to bring America back. You did so much work to elect this president and to create this spirit of revival in our country. And I really feel like our country is back on the balls of our toes and just ready to spring forward into even more prosperity than we had before.
Well, thank you, Congressman Gates. And look, I know both of you have developed close personal relationships with the president, and I'm sure you've had the opportunity to speak to him about the impact of the coronavirus in your respective communities. And after we take a short break, we're going to come back and talk about that. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a quick commercial break. That's how we pay the bills here at the Trump TV world. And we'll be right back after that.
President Trump cruises to victory with a record-breaking Republican turnout.
Trump got more total votes than Obama got as an incumbent.
Republican turnout operation in Texas is extraordinary.
Complete domination.
Receiving more primary votes than any sitting president.
We're winning. We're winning all over.
We had record turnout for an incumbent president.
The Republican Party has never been unified like it is now.
Turnout was also huge for Donald
President Trump celebrating a record-breaking victory.
It's not even a party, it's a movement.
More than President Obama had by a wide margin.
Let's realize how good Donald Trump's political operation is.
To all Americans tonight, I'm with you, the American people. I am with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. And we are going to keep America great.
Okay, and welcome back. This is Corey Lewandowski with Team Trump Online. I have the privilege of being joined today by Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida and Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York. And we're talking about the coronavirus pandemic and the way that they have seen it impact their congressional district. Prior to the break, we talked about each of their personal relationships with Donald Trump. We know Congressman Gaetz from his fiery testimony in front of Congress and also his steadfast support of the president on Fox News and other media outlets. And Congresswoman Elise Stefanik really came to be a household name during the impeachment trial, where there was a period of time where there was a private meeting of members only. And I think a member of Congress asked her to leave because they didn't recognize her as a member of Congress because she's so young and energetic. They thought she was a staffer. And she has been someone who has been a steadfast supporter of this president, someone who was there on the front lines during that fake impeachment trial. So let's get right back to both of them. Congressman Gaetz, let me ask you, your governor in Florida, Ron DeSantis, is starting to open the beaches again. We're starting to see a resurgence of hopefully the economy coming back to Florida. Do you think that the weather in Florida is partially the reason why you haven't had as many cases as we have seen in New York as it relates to the pandemic? And do you agree with the governor's ability to open those state beaches back up so people can start to enjoy that sunlight again?
I think our governor is making the right decision. We've had a number of conversations with Dr. Fauci and other experts in viral and infectious diseases, and they've said that there is some evidence that in warmer and more humid weather, you have a reduced rate of community transmission as a consequence maybe of someone grabbing a door handle or touching an elevator button. Now, of course, we have to remain diligent in washing our hands and using sanitizer and engaging in good hygiene, but it appears that the old adage may be true, that sunlight may in fact be the best disinfectant. I was doing some reading back when the Spanish flu hit in 1917, and they actually used to wheel out some of the patients onto the beaches and into the sunlight and into the fields because they saw less transmission from patient to patient under those circumstances than when people were locked up and in more confined spaces. So we think that open air, sunlight, social distancing, good hygiene can be the right recipe to return to economic prosperity. And I have to say, Corey, before this pandemic hit, Florida had a 2.8% unemployment rate. That is full employment in the Sunshine State. The only people that were at risk of being out of jobs were the people that worked in the unemployment offices because President Trump had created such a roaring economy for us. Now that economy has been snuffed down to an ember, but if we give it a little oxygen, if we layer on tinder, with this phased-in reopening that the president has led us through, I think ultimately we'll have that economy roaring again.
Well, I think you're right. And Congresswoman, tell us from your perspective, what is it you want to see both the federal government do, state governments do, in order to start to reopen businesses, not just in your district, but across the state of New York so people can get back to providing for their families?
This is all about a regional approach. This should not be a one-size-fits-all, and I think the president has made the right decision to defer to the governors to make decisions about what works for their state. So the state of Florida is in a very different situation than the state of New York. Even inside the state of New York, I've urged the governor, with the support of this administration, to take a regional approach. New York is a big state. Obviously, the epicenter is downstate on Long Island within New York City, but I'm hours and hundreds of miles north of that, and we are taking it very serious in my district, but we have not been hit as hard. So this regional approach is really important, even inside states, and the governor has agreed to do that. And they had a very productive discussion at the White House yesterday with Governor Cuomo and the president. You know, people want to get back to work. People often talk about the dignity of work, and I'm hearing that every single day from my constituents, from small business owners who are excited to get back to work as we move forward, but also take mitigating steps, making sure that we have hygienic practices, making sure that we have social distancing, adjusting from the norm, but also making sure that we're protecting public health while getting back to work. I think you can do both. It's a balancing act, but what I think the best decision this president has made is deferring to the governors about what works best for their state. Now, I do think this administration has been right to expand testing capabilities and to commit to supporting states and playing that important federal role of expanding our overall testing capabilities.
Well, we're speaking now with Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik from New York. We've been talking the coronavirus. We're going to take another quick commercial break. On the other side, I'd like to get both of your takes on Beijing Biden, the support that he has bestowed on the people of China for the last 50 years while he's been in elective office, and how we juxtapose that with what this president's been able to do, which is to start to decouple the U.S. economy from people who have never had our best interests in mind. So right on the other side of this break, we'll come back and we'll start talking about China and the Biden campaign and what they've been up to. Thank you very much. We'll be right back.
In times of struggle, we see the true greatness of the American character. Americans from all walks of life are rallying together to defeat the unseen enemy.
The president is talking about hope for people.
The president's been working nonstop.
The president has demonstrated excellent, bold leadership.
He said everything that I could have hoped for.
He is being the kind of leader that people need.
I can tell you the actions he has taken, his team has been on it.
He did what a president's supposed to do.
There's spirit in our country like never before.
They're doing things that have never been done before. This is record time for the development of a vaccine.
The one that really deserves the credit are the American people.
We're going to get through this and come out stronger than ever before.
Our message is to all Americans, we love them, we're with them, and we will not let them down.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Okay, and welcome back. I'm Corey Lewandowski, and welcome back to Team Trump Online. We are joined by our special guest today, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York and Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida. We've been talking so far about the coronavirus pandemic and how it's impacted both of their individual congressional districts and also the states of New York and Florida. But I'd like to take this opportunity to change topics a little bit because I'm a political guy and I want to talk about the November elections. We're less than 200 days away. We now know who the Democratic nominee is going to be. It's going to be Sleepy Joe Biden. We know that one of the major discussions in the upcoming November election is going to be how the president handled his response to the coronavirus. But I think it's also important that we discuss those steps that the media said the president failed on. And Congresswoman, I'd like to start with you. You recall when the president started to ban flights from China. Do you remember what Congress was doing that day, what Nancy Pelosi's prerogatives were that day? It was voting on what type of menthol we should be allowed to smoke or use in those Juul items. So, this is what the Congress was focused on. This is what the Democrat leadership was focused on. Can you just touch on a little bit how the media has juxtaposed the president's response to the coronavirus compared to what members of the Democratic Party have done and what Joe Biden has talked about?
Well, it's very clear. The president took this very seriously from the start, and the Democrats attacked him. For example, when the president made the right decision to prioritize public health and ban flights from China, Biden and Democratic leadership, including Speaker Pelosi, opposed that and accused him of being xenophobic. That was the right decision to make, and public health officials at the most senior level said that helped lower the overall number that we could have seen of positive cases. What we've seen from this Democratic leadership is they have been focused single-mindedly on impeaching this president and undermining him. And the media, unfortunately, in terms of the mainstream, have supported their efforts to do so. I do think when we look back on this, that the president, those tough decisions that he made early on were prioritizing overall public health. And China overall is going to be an important political issue as we head to the polls this November. This president has been tougher on China than any other president in our nation's history. As a young member of Congress, like Matt Gaetz is as well, this is going to be a generational issue. This will be the top national security and economic issue, I think, of the 21st century. And the fact that this president has talked about bringing back jobs from China, has talked about strengthening our manufacturing base in the United States. That's what voters are looking for in this country, because this crisis has shined a megawatt light on the fact that China even threatened to withhold ventilator production and PPE production. So this issue of China is going to be critical as we head to November and critical in years to come, which is why we need the president's tough, honest leadership talking about the importance of the American manufacturing base.
Congresswoman, you're exactly right. And Congressman Gaetz, if you could follow up on that. Again, think about this. China has held us over a barrel for 30 years, whether it has been the production of personal protective equipment that we now know that they've held us hostage for, whether it has been simple things like aspirin. We have seen that they have held the United States over a barrel. And this president, for the first time in 30 years, has said, we're not going to take it anymore. What have you seen as a young member of Congress? How have you seen the response and the relationship with China change over the course of this administration? And do you think it's the right way to go?
President Trump's the first president in my lifetime to truly understand China, to understand the threat that they pose. We've heard Democrats for years now telling us that the greatest threat we face is Russia, with their fully commoditized economy sort of entails. But when Elise talks about our confrontation with China being a generational one, know that she is one of the most informed members of Congress on this subject, because Elise Stefanik is the Republican lead on the subcommittee that evaluates emerging threats and capabilities. She oversees a lot of our special forces, a lot of our cybersecurity work on the Armed Services Committee. And so when you actually get down to the brass knuckles of global competition, each and every day we are posting up against China. China is the major threat. So I think that in the upcoming election, there are going to be two fundamental questions, Corey, that all voters of all stripes will ask themselves. First, which presidential candidate, is it Trump or Biden, gives us the best opportunity to rebound economically? Who can seize all of this pent-up demand and really launch the country forward? Now, when Biden was in power last, we sort of trudged along in this economic malaise, and you saw right when President Trump was inaugurated, the stock market took off. We had regulatory reform, we had tax reform, consumer confidence, business confidence, money returning from overseas to fund the ambitions, dreams, and wages of American workers. And so I think that's a good frame for us. But just as Elise put it, we also have to show that President Trump is the only candidate for president capable of confronting China. Joe Biden told us we had nothing to worry about from China, and I think I've seen news reports that his son may still be involved from a business standpoint in operations there, and there's really no free business in China. It's all ultimately tied to their government. So I think it's reasonable to have a president looking out for our country, fighting for our country, and then capitalizing on the great work that folks like Elise are doing to ensure that we are prepared to meet those emerging threats and capabilities globally.
Well, we've clearly got some work ahead of us to educate the American people of Joe Biden's record. We know, and you know this because you're aware of it, Joe Biden wanted to include the Green New Deal in one of the stimulus bills that was supposed to be included to help the people who are impacted by the coronavirus outbreak. I don't believe those values fly in either New York or in Florida. But let me just touch on one more thing. Joe Biden has had an opportunity for the last 50 years to change the way Washington worked. And both you, Congresswoman, and you, Congressman, came to Washington with the same kind of mantra as Donald Trump, which is we want to go and change the way things work. And as you look forward over the course of the next 5 months for the November election, Congresswoman, I'll start with you. Do you think your constituents are ready to continue the path of change in Washington, or do they want to go back to the way it was under the previous administration, which is politics as usual?
They do not want to go back to where we were under the Obama-Biden administration. They do not want to go back to the status quo. People want results. When I first ran for Congress, I ran on this concept of new ideas and a new generation of leadership, really changing the status quo of why people are so frustrated with Washington as usual. And this president has done that. He has focused like a laser on delivering results across this country, whether it's renegotiating trade deals, whether it's making sure that we have an economic boom, or bringing back those manufacturing jobs, which are so important to the American worker. That's what I think the key choice is, as well as this overall who's going to be tough on China and who's going to hold China accountable. That focus on results is what's going to resonate at the ballot box in my district this November.
And Congressman, the same question to you. Do you think the American people are ready for that forward-facing change that Donald Trump and you have helped to bring to Washington? Or do you hear that they want to go back to the way it used to be?
I think Americans really miss the optimism that we were enjoying just before this terrible virus hit us. And it was an optimism fueled by the energy of our enthusiastic president. What's so special about our movement, the viewers watching us today, working with Elise and working with you, Corey, is that we're a participatory movement. If you're part of the Trump team, we need you to do stuff. We need you to make phone calls, knock on doors, give donations. We need you to pray for us. We need you to give emails of guidance and encouragement. And what I see on the left is a whole lot of infighting, a whole lot of depression. Joe Biden was just sort of like the last guy at the dance in that clown car of a Democratic primary they had, and so they give him the nomination. And so I think that in this campaign, if we could continue to be that bright light of joy and optimism and patriotism for our great country, people will want to see that continue for another 4 years, and they won't want to go back to the days when we're simply told that we have to deal with stagnant wages or a slow economy or other countries taking advantage of us. We don't have to deal with that at all. You helped spark that movement, Corey, when you ran the president's campaign back in 2016, and I feel like the fire is burning just as hot throughout this country to do it again in 2020.
Well, I want to thank you both. And before I let you both go, I want to remind the viewers of what's special about each of your respective congressional districts. And if you could talk about what the president's helped deliver. And Matt, I'll start with you. Pensacola, Florida is well known as a military area. It is a place that has some of the very best fighter pilots in the world that train there. Can you talk briefly about what it has meant to have a president who has so strongly supported our military and made sure that they've had the tools that they need to be successful as we continue to fight wars on terrorism around this globe?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that question. This is an issue that is very near and dear to my heart and to Lisa's heart as members of the Armed Services Committee. Rebuilding our military, giving our service members the training and munitions and equipment they need, giving pay raises to our military, reforming the VA so that our military families are able to have more choice and get better care. This is not just strategically important for our recruitment goals and for our national security. This is a moral obligation in our country to take care of our heroes and to ensure that we continue to maintain the primacy as the world's hegemon, capable of ensuring that American values have the right might standing behind them. And so doing what he said he would do has been a hallmark of the Trump presidency, and delivering on promises for our military, our vets, and their families is something that I am so proud to have been a part of.
Well, and Congresswoman, as Matt said, you also serve in the Armed Services Committee. You have a huge military presence in your district in Fort Drum. Tell us what it has meant to have a president who stands with our troops and makes sure that they have the resources necessary to be successful.
It has been so important. And as Matt mentioned, the fact that this president has kept his promise to rebuild our nation's military, People feel that day to day in my district. I had the honor of hosting President Trump to sign the National Defense Authorization Act at Fort Drum. I worked for 8 months to get him there, and it was a huge success. This is about rebuilding our confidence in our nation's military. And as we face the choice this November, let's remember that the Obama-Biden administration hollowed out our nation's military. Those across-the-board defense cuts devastated our military readiness. We had more soldiers, sailors, airmen dying from accidents than we did those that were deployed. That means that this president has delivered when it comes to reinvesting in our troops. And also in my district, I border Canada. The fact that he's renegotiated NAFTA to give us a better access, whether it's our farmers, whether it's our manufacturers, that has been hugely significant and important in my district, which is why he's in such a strong position to win again in New York's 21st district, but also win again for a second term.
Well, I want to thank both of you for joining me here today on our Trump television operation. Look, if you want to join us, obviously you can go to armyfortrump.com. That's ARMYFOR Trump.com. It is so special to have two future and current leaders of the Republican Party and really the next generation of Washington, D.C. here with us today, talking about how this president has impacted you, your congressional district, and the leadership that he has demonstrated. So I want to thank both of you very much for joining us here. I am grateful for all that you do to continue to fight for the freedoms that this country holds so dear. I thank you for standing up for our active duty veterans, our active duty military, our veterans, and I want to thank you for being with us today. And I wish you both the very best of luck in your re-election campaigns come November.
Thanks, Corey. Thanks, Elise.
Thank you.